China challenge is front and center here in Washington today. Vice President Xi Jinping is here for what you might call a getting to know you tour. Xi is expected to become China's president later this year. And in addition to high-level meetings at the White House and the Pentagon and more, he's getting a sense of the challenges ahead. President Obama, for example, raised some specific human rights cases in private and made this gentle nudge in public.
On critical issues like human rights, we will continue to emphasize what we believe is the importance of recognizing the aspirations and rights of all people. And we expect that China will continue to take a growing role in world affairs.
And on Capitol Hill, a top Army officer discussed the escalating cyber war between Washington and Beijing.
I believe someone in China is hacking into our systems and stealing technology and intellectual property, which at this point is a crime. I can't attribute it directly to the PLA.
So who is Xi, and how might he differ from the current president, Hu Jintao? Let's begin there with the former ambassador to China and the one-time presidential hopeful, Jon Huntsman. Governor, it's good to see you. You have met the vice president. You know him better than most Americans. Let me ask the question this way. What don't we know about the man who will become China's next president?
Well, we don't know what kind of leader he's going to be, because you've got to be in strict conformity in the 2 years running up to leadership changes. So if you stop to reflect on this October, the 18th Party Congress, sweeping changes in Chinese leadership, I'd say that 70% of the top 200 leaders are going to turn over, including 7 members of the all-important Standing Committee of the Politburo, which is effectively the board of directors of the country. So for 2 years before you're in conformity, for a year after or thereabouts you're in conformity. What we don't know is what he's likely to be like as a leader and what his priorities are going to be in 2013 and beyond.
And some people would ask this question, and certainly a lot of dissidents and activists in China ask this question. They say, does it matter? Or even if he is a reformer, even if he is personally in favor of more openness, could he do that, or would he be too beholden to the powerful interests?
Well, what we do know is that he will be dealing with a new slate of characters, and he has an opening in terms of fresh faces and new leaders who are going to occupy some of these positions. He has an opening himself because I think he is more of a reform-minded leader. We'll see what the years ahead prove him out to be. But I do believe if you combine new leadership in Beijing, which we'll have after October, combined with a new head of state who's a little more reform-minded than we've seen in years past, then we're likely to see a very real coming together of new leadership in Beijing with the dissident community and the activist community, those seeking greater reforms, either politically or beyond, having a conversation. They haven't done that in a very long time, and I think Xi is smart enough to realize that he's going to have to make some accommodations in the years ahead, or they could see a serious train wreck.
Size him up. We see the public presence. We see him at the White House. We see pictures, official pictures in Beijing. In private meetings, what's he like?
He's confident, he's well briefed, he's soft-spoken, he's able to connect human being to human being. He doesn't always just read from his talking points, which is what we've seen in years past coming out of Chinese leaders. I think that there's an opportunity in the years to come to forge the kind of relationship where we can take the U.S.-China relationship, now 40 years old, and move it beyond just a relationship based on shared interests, trade, economics, and just the perfunctory things, to a relationship based on shared values. I think if we're going to give the U.S.-China relationship long-term durability, you've got to start infusing values into that relationship.
And so then what's the political responsibility on this end? You hear, for example, during the Republican campaign, with which you're quite familiar, Governor Romney talks about, they're cheating, I'll punish them. President Obama has talked a little tougher when it comes to China and sanctions of late, economics. Just today, the vice president raised his concerns about why in the United Nations Security Council wouldn't they go along with the tough Syria resolution. What's the right approach?
Those are all mechanical parts of the relationship. They'll be here year in and year out. The longer-term play between the United States and China will be whether or not we can sit down at a table and talk about values, talk about political reform, talk about human rights, talk about a recognition of different ethnic groups within China. The role of the internet in society, for example. These are all very difficult issues to have discussions about, yet they're going to have to be part of our future relationship, and we'll see in the next few years if this actually becomes a reality in our dialogue.
And so if you were president of the United States, how would you test this new leader of China to see what do we have here? Do we have someone who's willing to think outside the box, act outside the box, open up?
Well, I would recognize the reality of Xi Jinping being fairly constrained for the first year or so once he's been given the mantle of power. And then I think this country likely will require a new level of dialogue with China, which is a regularized, maybe twice or three times per year, head of state to head of state kind of interaction that allows us to have the kinds of discussions we haven't been able to have in the past. We talk about trade, we talk about North Korea, we talk about Iran, and all of the transactional types of issues. But lost in all of this are the broader themes of values. And the values will cement the relationship longer term if we can get it right.
Governor Huntsman, it's good to see you. Appreciate your time.
Good to see you.
Thank you, sir.